is on the internet. I decided I'd try to help out this person on Reddit. So a fellow Redditor is asking about textures from Blender and imported objects. So I'll help them out, and I already downloaded the helicopter they're asking about. So I guess it is a. Well, I'll make sure it's a new Blender scene. So just load off blank Blender scene. And we'll go about getting this thing set up. So what you want to do is wavefront object is probably the easiest way to import. So I'm going to do that, and I already have my directory bookmarked. So I'll just get the Blackhawk that they're talking about and import it. And as you can see, it is not positioned right. I know there's different import settings, but for most of my models, they do import right. But if you see this, don't unselect anything, just rotate it. Rotate it X 90 degrees, and I gotta do negative 90 so it's facing there, and I will also rotate Z 180 degrees. So, because the front in Blender is actually this direction rather than that direction. And before I'm all done, so my coordinates internally stay correct, I will hit Control A and apply rotation and scale. It's just to make sure the model is okay to scale, and you can readjust the scale or something at this stage and apply it before you do anything else. So this is a recommendation. And he said, well, there's no textures. Well, it imports correctly into Blender render internals, so I would start out when you import a mesh to set it up for Blender, start out here. The object importer has not been updated for cycles since who knows when, but it imports okay for the Blender render, so starting out, just do that. And he said, well, there's no textures. Well, actually there are, because if you switch to textured mode, you can see that they did import, so the textures are there. You have some problems with this model. I guess it was made for a game environment, so a few of the normals and stuff are messed up. I could fix that. Could probably be another topic, but right now we're worried about textures. So if we just click on another part of the model instead of having them all selected, you'll see that these things show up now for the individual parts. So we go to the list of textures for each part, and we go over them. And what I would recommend doing is Blender Render, believe it or not, actually has a nodes mode. So we'll go to compositing and click on here, and right now you'll see there's nothing there, but there is a checkbox for use nodes. And I'm in a compositing layout right now, so click on the material slots, and you can go through them all, and what we'll see is there's a place to use nodes. So do that. And you're like, whoa, it blacked out, there's nothing there. Well, the way to fix this, I don't know why it doesn't do this automatically, but you go here and you browse the material to be linked, and you find the same name of the material you're in. So you see material 28 down there, just link the material 28 up here, and you gotta do that for all of them. So it's a little tedious. Yes, it is. Be honest, it is. And we'll do that. I'll pause the video as I link all these nodes, and I'll come back and go from there. Alright, I gotta bring up this. Alright, I'm back now. For you it wasn't all that long, but I had about a dozen different materials I had to link all the nodes to. As you can see, they're all linked up. But if I were to switch back and forth right now, it still wouldn't be correct. So there's one more thing I gotta do, is I gotta add the texture information for each node just as a separate channel, because that makes it easier when converting to cycles. You gotta do it manually. Like I said, I don't know of an automatic way. Maybe somebody could write create a script or add-on that does what I'm doing here. Because it's just redundant. You just gotta go through each one and set them up so they're all like this. But I showed you the first one, so it wasn't that long ago for me watching, but for me it's just, you gotta do a lot of these. So what I gotta do now to make this more correct is, let's see, you gotta do, where is it? I think it's input, there it is, texture. Because if you go back and forth between cycles in this will turn pink, which means the texture isn't assigned. But while we have each material selected, like this material, you can see that there is a texture on it. So, since I'm doing this, while I'm putting these here, I'm going to link the color here. And you see this isn't changed yet, but just for correctness, we'll do all these so they're like this. So what I'm going to do is pause it again and add a texture slot to all of them so I can just get it going again. You're like, Paul, you're pausing again. But for you, it won't be long. Alright. Hello, and I'm back again. So I got all these things with the channels linked. And as I linked them, these little sockets changed a little bit. And just to make sure everything's correct, you can see there's a texture here, but there's no texture there. So how do we know which texture is the correct texture? And this will make our next step easier as we get into cycles. So what I'll do is, on every material, if you click on the texture slot, it will show a different texture up here. So what we gotta do is just click this texture here, see which one it is, and the name for it is also down here, which will also make it easier. So if you look below the image panel, it's panel JPEG, but for the texture name it is KD003. So all we do is go over here, and which one is KD003, just make sure that matches whatever's up here. So you just drop it in the slot here for each material. So for material 28, it's KD003. For material 25, we go over to textures, and we see it is just plain KD, so match that, and you just gotta go through all the textures, or all the material slots, and do that manually. I know it's a pain in the butt, but it's part of setup, so. If there's a script that does this, that would be great, but I haven't seen it yet. So I'm gonna pause it and do that. Hello again. For you, it wasn't very long, was it? Okay, so after I went through all of the materials and matched up their textures, I noticed some of these, if I go through them, did not have a texture assigned in that slot. So I noticed that don't have that kind of texture, or don't have an image texture. You can just go over them and select this texture node, and you can get rid of it. It's not needed. So on all the ones that don't have a texture in the texture property, just go back through the materials and get rid of the texture. So if I go here, and since if you'll see it, it won't have anything assigned there either. So I will just go through those real quick and do that. I'm just hitting X to delete. Okay, so now we got all that done. What else should we do here? Well, another thing I like doing is, before I get to the next stage, moving to cycles, these nodes and the cycles nodes are not the same nodes. The Blender internal nodes you'll see has like an image on it, so that's one pretty big clue. That's an internal node. But because they don't really mix and match with the cycles nodes, they'll still be in the same layout space, but they don't work together that well. So what I like doing is selecting all these and joining them in a frame, which is Control J. So all my Blender internal nodes I keep in a frame separate, so I know they're their own thing and don't connect them to anything else. So just do that for all these. I can hit all, Control J, and just go through all that. And I'll repeat that, and I'm going to pause that for now, and I'll be back pretty soon. Alright, back again. Which for you watching the video, it shouldn't be all that long. So I have all the internal nodes, or the internal materials, converted to internal node materials, which is good stuff for working between both Blender and Cycles render engines, because you can just switch back and forth easy that way. Just takes a while to set up. Like I said, it's a bit of a pain in the butt, but you can see down here, turn textures on. They're applied, but I'm in an internal right now. So let's go to cycles, and we can see it is all blank again in cycles, even though the textures are there. And if I switch back to the internal, you can see they're still there. So it's not like they're lost. It's just not set up for the other mode. And since I have nodes applied in internal, you'll also notice when I switch to cycles, the cycles nodes don't come up, even though it shows it's using nodes. So let's fix that real quick with this material. And what I'll simply do is add a shader node, which starting out is a diffuse. You can always mix them up, but just to get your basic start out, a shader node, output node, material output. You have to add the output in this case for setup. And these I usually don't frame them unless I'm doing something for their own layout, but just so you don't confuse it. And if you want, on the internal nodes, you can do the label like BI, and that gives you like a little label there, just so you don't mix your stuff up. Because you don't want to do it. You'll be confused and you'll be like, why is it not working? No, you don't want to do that. So, what we do here is image texture like that, and right here like so. So we have an image texture, diffuse, and a material. Connect them like so, and I am going to box select these, and I'm going to copy, and I'm going to paste it like that to all the materials, so it'll have that set up for all of them. And I'm going to pause again, but for you, it'll make it quicker. You don't have to watch me do this like 100 times. And I'm not pausing again. Alright. So I'm back in here again, and you can see I have this copied over, and when I copied them over to all the slots, they've all turned pink in this part of the layout because there's no texture assigned, but click here, up here, texture properties. It doesn't show here, but if we go to internal, let's just switch to internal for this stage, and you'll see that even though you switch internal, all your cycles nodes are there, so we're good. And what you'll see here is that's KD003, and that's that. So switch to textures view panel, and for each texture, so we're in material 28, switch to texture view for material 28. We can see that this is panel JPEG for that slot. So paying attention to what this is called, with image texture here, and click on that little icon thing on the left, and panel JPEG. So that texture is set, and we go to the next one, and you see it changes, bam, right there. So that's a good thing to see. And here it is just plain KD, so we click here, what's this KD, and it is fuselage JPEG. So click there, you don't have to open it, it's already inside there, so click there and fuselage. And we go over and bam, and we just do that for all the rest of them now. The ones without image textures, you can delete that too. So we'll go over that real quick, but I'm going to pause it again to get it all set up. And unpausing again. I'm sure you're tired of hearing me say that, but it's just a quick thing for me to do, so at least if you're watching this, I found it makes the video faster instead of watching me do the same thing again and again. Alright, so we have our nodes set up, and we have this part set up, and now we can switch to cycles render. And as you can see in cycles, now we see the textures here too. I didn't do all the parts yet, but we're doing a quick overview, so you know you gotta do the same for each part. Some of the materials will be shared between parts, which saves you some of that work. And the neat thing is that you see your nodes are in the same space, so if I go to a material that doesn't have a texture node on it. Alright, so this one doesn't have a texture node on it, whatever this is. And you'll notice that some of the properties actually can be shared between the internal and the cycles nodes, like color. So the quick way to make sure your color matches, like when when you don't have a texture to hook it up to, is just go over here and use the eyedropper, which is E for eyedropper, and copy it over. And there might be different colors and stuff, so we just do that. Go through our nodes, and you'll see you don't have the. So you just copy the colors over like that. It's pretty easy. And I'm not going to go into normal mapping and specular mapping and all of that. That's still like extra work, but the same ideas apply. You just have to do different slots. So if you have more than one material for each thing, you might want to go over and check which is which. But this is a start. You get the idea. And just copy them over. Notice right now they are all diffused. They're not things. So when you see alpha through this one here, it's clear. You might want to do is change this to glass, but you just click that node slot, and if you have this highlighted, it will change. So that one's like a diffuse. That one probably is. This one is a glass because you can see through it. So we gotta click here and change the slot there. That one's fine. And you might want to add glossy and stuff, but that's recycled and stuff, so I'm sure you know that. So now you got your model set up for rendering and cycles. If I go to rendered view, you can see the textures are on here, and I'll go to the default view. Where's this light? It's light in the default scene. So I'm going to move it over. And I'm going to switch it to nodes, and I'm going to make it a lot brighter. And now if we go to rendered preview, we can see the textures are there. They did import, so it's just a matter of setting them up, and you got to do it manually. Just a pain in the butt, but it gets done. So, and I don't wireframe view. I want a solid view. On some of these parts, you'll notice they have transparency, but it doesn't show. But if you were to go under material settings, this part of view, where is it? That green glass here. This is a green glass. You'll notice there's an alpha here, but it's not showing up here on the view. So what you gotta do is go to the object properties and click the transparency slot for each object where there's transparency, and turn it on. And that way in your preview you will see through your windows and stuff. So it's another thing that might catch you. You're like, why can't I see in my windows? It's because for some reason you gotta turn it on. But that just gives you your preview a little bit better in this set panel. Well, it's already turned on. And there you go, that's the start of it. And I switch to textured view. See, it's there, and I believe material view shows it. Yeah, material view shows it to some extent, and solid view by default doesn't, but if you click the end panel here and turn on shaded, textured solid, I don't know why it's not showing, but sometimes it should show. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know why the deal's. Maybe it's just the way my computer's. Cap overrides that. Oh, you know what? That's for texture paint, I believe. So if you were to go do texture paint, oh, this is selected. Yeah, see that textured solid, I believe, works on that. I don't know. But if you go to texture view, you'll see that the textures are applied. So it's just a matter of switching them on and getting all these set up. But the nice thing about it is the way this is set up is I can switch back and forth between render engines, and the textures are same, or should be the same in both. I know there's some slight shading differences and stuff, but so say you're setting up scene and you're animating it and you want a quick preview animation, you can just go to the Blender render mode to do it, and then switch the cycles for your rendering. So there you go, that's how you get stuff set up, or at least a way I know of, to set materials up between two render engines and have it ready to go in cycles. Alright, have fun, do your Blender things, make cool videos. There.